Hello and welcome to the season finale of season 3 of the Voiro Podcast. Season 3, episode 13. With me, as always, is Kavita Shenoy, founder and CEO of Voiro.
Hi.
Kavita, we've done 39 episodes so far. We're on our way to 100.
I still remember when we were at Videoweek and we were all kind of straggling back to work. And I said, let's start this podcast. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And we had this one session, which was terrible because we didn't know how to talk to each other. And I realized that it was because we weren't really having conversations at that point in time. We were just being transactional during the pandemic. And then suddenly we wanted to come back to work and have these open, very long arc conversations about what's the future. And we were both stuttering and trying to figure out what next. And then finally you bought your mic and everybody knows how we're now on this podcast. But I'm so happy that we are doing this podcast because it gives us, it's a nice end to the week. I like the fact that we have our team in the office with Leena, Santosh and Gautam. Leena keeps the energy up all the time, trying to figure out what we should be speaking about and also giving us her very astute outtakes once it's done, whether it's good, bad, average. But also, which we didn't expect. This is what we didn't expect. We thought we'll just put it out into the open and people who listen to us or not, doesn't matter. We're just doing it for ourselves and all of that. But people are actually listening to it and writing to us. And I love it. And I also like the fact that this year we've taken a serious commitment to bringing people onto the podcast.
Yes.
So if you're listening and you want to be on this podcast and you have something to say about the industry, drop us a line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. That first episode seems so far ago, but also not so far
very
ago
much.
At the same time,
Yeah.
it just seems like
And
yesterday.
every time we are going to record this podcast, I get nervous. I get nervous because I'm like, oh God, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? And then I'm like, just calm down. I'm constantly talking to myself in my head saying, just be normal. There is no
happens to me as well.
Yeah.
The night before, I'll be hitting,
Reading up.
going to bed, and then suddenly strikes me like, oh God, am I ready? Am I gonna just run out of things to say?
I worry that you're going to ask me some googly question that I don't have an answer to. And I'll be grappling for something and then it'll get recorded because there's no editing on this. So, yeah. So it's fun. It's fun. It keeps us on our toes. And I highly recommend, even if you're not obviously recording a podcast, but for people to have these conversations with their peers, because this is basically what you end up doing, right? You don't want to, I think the days of bitching out your organization has gone past. I think the way you actually bond with your colleagues now and talk to people is about, your opinions on the industry, what you're doing, why you're doing it. And it brings a different flavor to work.
Yeah. I must say that doing this has also forced me to be a little more opinionated. I would read things in the past and just say, it's a complicated industry. But now the fact that we are here and we talk about things and jam about things at an industry level on a weekly basis. It's one thing to do it when you attend a conference or every now and then. But the fact that we're doing it on a weekly basis has really helped me sort of move my brain in that direction.
Yeah, it's not a start-stop thing. You're constantly reading, you're constantly filing it away. And it's a good space. And I see that a lot of people in the office also are doing it now. They're kind of talking about stuff. They're commenting on things. They're getting themselves to expose themselves a lot more to what's happening in the industry. And this is, hands down, and obviously we're biased, the best industries to be a part of. So
100%. It affects culture. It affects every person on the planet. So here's what we're going to do today. Given that it's the end of season 3, we're going to talk about 3 trends, 3 newsmakers, and 3 recommendations for people or content that we follow. And as I was preparing for this and trying to figure out what are our favorite trends from the season, I went back and looked at every episode from this season. And here are some of the things we touched upon. AI, the IPL, Netflix, TikTok, and short video in general, Spotify, connected TV, where we talked about it not once, not twice, but 3 times, including having Vikram Chande join us for one of the episodes. Ad sales, where we had Rajiv Dhal and the Add-on Mo crew join us. Audience engagement, YouTube, self-service, the cinema experience and the women's IPL, which is one of the most fun episodes we did. The Department of Justice and everything they're trying to do with big tech and Google and Twitter and TikTok. And of course, F.A.S.T. What a lovely wide range of topics. And again,
the whole world is involved in it, right? The whole world.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But it's very clear to me that our industry is very, very wide-ranging, but also runs very deep in as a part of everybody's lives. We've always talked about the fact that you come in on a Monday and the most common question is, what did you watch? What did you like? How did you consume content? What did you do this weekend? So I'm truly a big lover of our industry. So, top 3 trends from this season. We talked about this before the recording as well. The first one is connected TV. What do you think? The year of the CTV is panning out?
It is, and I think it's solidifying a lot. And I know that we've been reaching out to various industry stakeholders. You guys spoke to Prop yesterday. We've been speaking to a whole bunch of our industry peers about what they're doing in the CTV space. I don't think anybody wants to go hammer and tongs at something that they don't know too much about. Everybody's making cautious, calculated moves so that they're not repeating their mistakes. And interestingly, and this is something that you told me yesterday and that we both agreed with, is that CTV is not taking from digital. It's taking from TV. And that in itself, if you just think about that one statement, there is so much to be said and done and undone and redone with how CTV operates in the market. And to support that, I was watching a video on Videoweek. They had an event recently, and somebody from Freewheeling was talking about this. And in line with CTV, what they basically said that the CTV industry today needs 3 things: scale, standardization, and being easy to buy. And if you take a step back, this is basically what television is today. And when you make all of this and put this into a big pot, it starts becoming a large enough pool of inventory to be able to tackle and rival YouTube. YouTube being, for the sake of this conversation, UGC content, and CTV being premium
High
content, high quality content that's produced, which means that both have its place. UGC content also can be very well produced and have extremely committed audiences, and so can CTV. And as we go along, CTV audiences and say UGC audiences for a particular channel will be comparable because of the number of channels that you actually have today. So the people being spoiled for choice, you will definitely have smaller pools of audiences as well. So the ability, but what struck me the most is this ease of buying, which is where people don't want to let go of TV. TV is very easy to buy because of the standardization. So yeah, what's the next one?
The next one is context, which, in light of the CTV conversation and the fact that CTV is borrowing from television, I remember I was on this panel a month ago where there's a gentleman who specifically said that this is an industry that keeps repeating itself. And we will realize that hyper-localization, hyper-targeting is at some point not worth the computation and the expense. And the one thing that has helped with television is what has been standardized is the fact that you can use context and time of day and location as enough of a proxy for it to be a performant medium. We've seen and followed companies like Grapeshot, Gum, folks who are reinventing how we look at context as not just static tags or genres, but truly trying to drive context in a dynamic fashion. When we talked to Vikram Chande on that podcast, which is still today one of my favorite episodes, he said ACR data is the key to this industry. The fact that you can use that to arrive at context. And then, of course, there's a stack so far with SSAI and SSPs and DSPs. But the fact that context can really, really give advertisers what they want, and that's typically what they're used to as a standardization practice in the television world, it's for me a trend that ties directly into connected TV. It is going to attract television dollars. It is going to, and it is also and done the larger share of.
Yeah, and that's the way people have traditionally bought. And, human beings will always choose a simpler way of working rather than trying to overcomplicate their lives. Maybe there'll be a lot of post-evaluation effort that will go into making sure that what you bought was actually worth it. But I think, in my opinion, the way you buy for CTV will probably go towards what television is doing today.
Yeah.
And even ACR data and all the data that's coming out, how much data is there? And do we really need to burn down our servers to actually get down to something that you, like in Hindi, they say, mota mota, you know what's going on, right? But you know around about what's happening in this space. So that's context.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, and you have to be quick while buying, right? Because you can't take that much time to sit and like evaluate, because these are all very transient, time bound pieces of communication that need to drive sales within a particular period of time.
Yeah.
So you need to buy advertising also, keeping that in mind. So given all of this stuff, I think context, human intervention and intuition, making sure that you're able to understand the emotion behind the content in itself of the audience watching it, and therefore does your brand want to associate with people who are in that frame of mind, is something that people will start talking about more consciously, right?
The third trend that we believe is defining our industry is a form of consolidation. I was looking at the First Party Capital newsletter that came out. I think it was on 6th April, about a week ago. And Ciaran was talking about this new fight between SSPs and DSPs jostling for position. So there is this endless middle, to quote Tom Wormsgans, where the industry is getting rewired. We've seen this before. I remember back when DMPs were coming around, agencies, SSPs, DSPs, everyone wanted to prove that they themselves are data-driven and kind of wanted a larger share of the pie. They didn't want anyone eating their lunch. And we're seeing that happen again between DSPs and SSPs. We talked about this, I think, a week ago when we were reading the DigiDay article about undifferentiated SSPs are the ones who are dying, not the big SSPs. But somewhere between what Trade Desk is trying to do with OpenPath, where they're effectively trying to cut out the middleman and go straight to publishers, with what SSPs are trying to do with them trying to strike deals with large agencies, there is this consolidation that is happening in this endless middle. But at the same time, we're also seeing big media companies go through their own forms of consolidation. We saw this a couple of years ago between AT&T, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Time. We saw it with Disney and Fox, and everything that went on with Rupert Murdoch's corner of our industry. We continue to see it with the fact that most recently HBO content has been pulled out of Hotstar in India, which has really pained all of us. So there is definitely going to be a lot more consolidation on every side of this industry. And it's something that we talked about years ago. It will consolidate. It will consolidate. This is unsustainable. And it took a pandemic, acceleration, a recession, and a hit on stock prices where everyone's focusing on profitability to accelerate this process. But I think there is some rewiring that's going on. Some call it a correction, some call it evolution. But I think consolidation is definitely happening around us.
Remind me again, do you know the answer to this? Has content ever been profitable? I'm not sure. I mean, have they really, hasn't it always been this expensive endeavor that almost like one fuels the other? It's like an endless cycle.
Look, it's always been expensive, and I don't have the perfect answer to this, but I cannot imagine, like right now, the last 10 years, the ability to start and float companies that are backed by venture capital where profitability is somewhere on the horizon has become a lot more commonplace. I don't think that was the case 30 years ago. So I cannot imagine that this was always the case. I would imagine that 30, 40 years ago, companies were built on the back of the fact that you had to be profitable. You cannot survive as a loss-making company and borrow money. Today, the speed at which content has to be produced, high speed, professionally produced, high quality content, is proving to have unsustainable models if you go down a certain path, if you try and achieve growth at all costs. Has it always been expensive? Yes. Has it always been profitable? I don't know.
Yeah. That's something that I've been turning over in my mind for a really long time, because right now we have, I was reading about how people are trying to figure out what next with content. A lot of the highly paid Phoebe Waller-Bridge and all of these people did not really turn around something that could actually, like, they could hang their hat on and say that I made money on this. They made news. They made content that newsmakers would watch. But I'm not really convinced that all of these investments actually panned out for them. And, content is a gamble at the end of the day. Speaking of newsmakers, who are your top 3 newsmakers?
Yeah. So the next section is our top 3 newsmakers, and beautiful segue from being profitable, Disney. We watched Bob Iger come back controversially, so, and take over the reins at Disney, and we are seeing the impact of that all over the world. Did not make a big bid for IPL rights in India. Is being careful about their expenses. Is doing layoffs. Um, Disney has always been in the news, much like the next company on our list, who have always been the world's greatest underdog for 40 years. But do you think that this is part of a larger move where Bob Iger is going to run this, cut their costs, keep them sustainable, and then hand over the reins to somebody else?
Well, it sounds logical when you say it like that. And how long is Bob Iger really going to stay around? And one of the things that I think most companies really suffer from is the fact that they are really not putting together a successor, ergo our favorite show, right? And putting together a team either that's going to succeed you, or a practice, or a vision, etc., is hard work, and it's even harder when the context is changing constantly. And when Bob left, when he's come back, it has fully changed, right? And they're now looking at trying to figure out what to do with Hulu. Hulu was one of the biggest competitions to Netflix. What is happening to them? Yeah. And this is another theme that has kind of come around. There are no good, formidable competition to each other, right? People are just killing off competition. There is no competition in the market. It's kind of leaning towards just one big company sort of consolidating stuff in their own space, and then people then post facto realizing that customer choice has been affected. Case in point, WBD, right? Currently, everybody's like, how did this happen? Because now shows are getting cancelled, and I can't catch these shows anywhere else, and movies are being pulled off the floors, that they're not being released. It's not in isolation, right? Because it has a domino effect on people's jobs. You don't have movies going to the floors. That means that entire production crew doesn't get paid. So what happens to them? So there's a halo effect around all of these cost cutting measures. And one of the things we spoke about was the loss of compounded knowledge. Do you remember you came up to office and said, "Hey guys, one of the things that I was thinking about was when you came to office the other day, and earlier we just took this at face value and said, yeah, whatever, layoffs are a part of life. It's horrible. It's frightening." But it's now we've sort of numbed ourselves to it. But from an organization's perspective, you're losing people who are actually, you have like compounded knowledge of what to do. And that is now coming to the fore. And that is something that I think companies are now sitting up and realizing. So I'm hoping that this lot of layoffs is not arbitrary.
The one person who seems to have not realized that is our next newsmaker, Elon Musk. He sacked most of the Twitter team, and I think this concept of losing compounded knowledge is really going to hit them. Say what you will about the fact that Twitter should have been a better business. They maybe should have never went public. They're a town square. They're more a need for civilization, blah, blah, blah. They should have converted themselves into a private company and into a protocol so you can have your own recommendation. There's many routes they could have taken. But the simple fact is, by sacking a majority of their team, especially teams that work on brand safety, on content moderation, they lost revenue. They're valued today at 20 billion after having bought them for 44 billion not that many months ago. I was a believer, and I talked about this during one of our episodes early on, that, maybe his vision is right. Maybe it needs to be taken private, which is still true. And maybe it takes someone like this who can actually put this product, which I really love, on a path to being much better and more open. But last week, Substack tried to launch a competitor to Twitter, so there's a lot of chatter about where Twitter is useful and where it's not. A lot of people have left Twitter. There's also recently there's been this narrative about how there is no good product for groups, for group conversations, and Twitter is most definitely not it. There's a product that launched last week called Wavelength, which talks about where we can all be in a group and have an AI bot in the group with us. Like the ChatGPT is a person, is an entity in the group. So there's a lot of people trying to reinvent groups.
What is a group? Like reinvent what a group is.
Reinvent what a group is and the technology that can enable groups. The biggest criticism of WhatsApp groups is that you can see everybody's phone number. So it's a big problem. On Twitter, if you have a group, you don't have personally, you don't have someone's phone number. You have their Twitter handle. And you can't really do much with that. But the thing about WhatsApp is it's kind of bleeds into their privacy a little bit. Like we are on a few Twitter groups, like you, me, and Anil on a Twitter group, right? But it's not the greatest group experience.
No.
We just use it to share tweets to each other.
Correct.
To
There's
more
no
than one
chatter
person.
on
There's
it.
no chatter on it.
I'm worried because I'm like, what if I say something inadvertent and it's going to be outside? So
Yeah.
I take it offline or we chat on our WhatsApp
exactly,
group.
right. But Substack tried to launch something, or there was chatter that they were going to launch a Twitter competitor. And Elon Musk got upset. And he temporarily blocked. So if you shared a Substack link last week, apparently that tweet could not be retweeted or
That's petty.
liked. Yes. Also, for a while, if you searched for the word Substack on the Twitter search bar, it automatically searched for the word newsletter instead. So it's gone down this kind of funky route. But while he is always going to be a newsmaker, I really, really hope that Twitter gets back to where it wants. Because I still love the product. I still use it
It's a
every
great
day.
product. And I do think that change cannot happen overnight. And one of the things that I have realized over the last so many years is that things compound. Everything compounds. And, you need to give everything time. And when you give things time, a lot of things can happen over, the fact that, the macroeconomic things could change. You could suddenly find something that is of value to your users. But what Elon Musk has done, I think it'd be foolish for us to think that he could have changed it overnight.
Yeah.
He kind of destroyed something overnight. But now I think we should give him a chance to
I hope so.
rebuild.
I'm not leaving.
I'm not
Twitter,
leaving.
going to
I like it.
Mastodon.
I've like you were saying the other day, I have curated my entire my Twitter
Recommendation engine, yeah.
my recommendation engine, and I'm not gonna give it up to now suddenly grapple around the open internet to find information that I really need.
Muted so many words and so
Correct.
many people.
Nuts.
Yeah.
All right.
Third newsmaker, of course, we heard someone 3 weeks ago say, in Satya we believe.
Oh yes.
Right?
Hand on heart.
Yeah, hand on heart. Microsoft, you cannot have a list of newsmakers in any quarter, especially this one, where you don't list the underdog of underdogs, Microsoft. I loved how Satya and Nadella, of course, with the investment in OpenAI and everything they're doing with Bing and Teams, definitely going to change the office stack, the work stack. But the fact that he said, we made Google dance, I thought was very tongue-in-cheek. I did not expect that from him. I did not expect him to front-foot it. I thought he would just do this in the background and win on market share and watch his share price go up. But the fact that he came out and said, yeah, they danced, we made them dance. That was pretty bold. I loved it. I love a little aggression.
Yeah, a little drama never hurt anybody. Yeah. So Microsoft, I was reading about the fact that Activision, the entire investment and the buy could probably be back on the table after being, on ice for some time. So we have to watch that space a little more. They'll get what they want. I think that'll happen. Ultimately, these things have a way of coming around and having a sudden turnaround, which is exciting to watch.
I was reading an interesting tweet the other day. It said, US lawmakers are probably going to be a little conflicted right now. I mean, they always are. But you've always fought consolidation. The biggest thorn that they're trying to be, but have sort of not been successful at, is stopping big tech. Because if you allow acquisitions to play out, then they become bigger and more powerful. And at some point, you can't then blame them for just for being big. But at the same time, these guys are saying, somebody please buy TikTok. Right?
Yes.
Nobody wants to put their hand up.
Yeah, nobody's putting their hand up.
Because these are the same people that are blocking acquisitions. So it's interesting to see how that finally plays out. I heard Walmart was in the mix. I thought that was odd. I didn't expect that.
I think it's odd that a government is asking somebody to buy out a private company.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. I mean, what is going on? It's just either throw them out like we did in India and stick with it and deal with the consequences. Build your own.
Yeah.
Or
Most
just like
pundits are
lump it.
using that as an example.
Yeah.
And they're saying India is doing okay after having thrown them out.
I mean, I am feeling extremely left out. But, well, what are you going to do?
I tried to download ShareChat and use it, but could not find English in the drop-down languages. Yeah.
It's not for you.
Yeah, Bhojpuri is not.
Yeah, it's not for you. You're just the 3% of Indian population.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, coming to our penultimate section, top recommendations. So Lena suggested we do top podcast, top influencer, and top newsletter.
Start with influencer.
Start with influencer.
You have so many, I can see your face.
I have so many. I actually listed 3 influencers. I'll tell you my top 3 influencers, then I'll tell you my top influencers. So the influencers are, for me, it's who I follow on either Twitter or on LinkedIn. It's Ciaran O'Kane, Paul Gubbins, and Terence Khwaja, who I think is also AdTech God.
I don't think he's AdTech God. Come on. No. AdTech God sounds somebody who's a little Asian. I don't think he's...
Are you AdTech God?
I wish I was, yeah. I wish I was. I was somebody cool like that. I'm not AdTech God. Damn it. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you and all these guys. But why no women? No women influencers? Am I a women influencer? Am I an influencer? Yes. Come on. Yes. So in the last quarter, I've picked up reading The Puck and also the associated podcast, which is The Town by Matthew Belloni, which is pretty good. And if you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe to both Puck as well as and listen to the podcast. But one of the things I must admit is that I don't subscribe to the Puck. I wait for the weekly free read that I can pick one. So it's almost like I'm a starving person and I'm like going through, okay, so what can I read that'll really, really like tickle my intelligence or whatever else. So it's just it's very well written.
So what's your top podcast then?
The Town.
The Town. Okay.
But you know, I have a steady diet, right? Like most people have a diet of what information they feed themselves. So the Ad Exchanger podcast and the eMarketer podcast are my dal roti.
Staples.
Yeah,
okay.
It is my dal roti. Yeah. And then if I need some embellishment and I want to have some I want to go deeper, I want to understand a little more about what's happening outside of it, but more in the Hollywood space, then I would go to The Town.
Yeah. I have my staples as well. So what I've done in Spotify is I've curated my podcast episodes and I just use that new episodes list. And it took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that if I missed an episode, I missed it. Otherwise, I would have this queue of unread, unlistened episodes and I'm just like, no. Now it's like the newspaper. I didn't read today's paper, I read tomorrow's paper. I was chatting with Arjun Koladi a few weeks ago. We have a crossword fight that we do every morning. And I was telling him, I'm like, I'm a long-time Spotify customer, user. And he said, I hope ad supported. And I said, no, subscription. I've already subscribed to Spotify. But I have similar staples. Ad Exchanger, All In podcast. And most recently, HBO Succession podcast.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it.
Don't.
I haven't listened to it at all because I have only watched episode 1 and I realized that I just don't have the will in me to go looking for... I know I have to just call somebody up that we know mutually.
Just avoid the internet.
Yeah, I just avoided the internet.
Just avoid the internet.
But I did watch The Watchful Eye. Did you watch it?
No, I did not.
So it's a darker version of Murders in the Building.
Ah, okay.
Very cool. It's nice. I binge watched it.
I've lined up Tetris this weekend,
what
which is what you had recommended.
Great movie. Yeah. Oh my God. First of all, anything Russia, I'm there. But this is such a riveting movie. And, behind every single innocuous looking thing, like a game of Tetris, there is so much that went on. So much that went on. And it's a great watch. It's a great watch. It's a riveting watch. And it's up there with all of the Apple production. Amazing. I really loved it.
Last question. What are you looking forward to in season 4 of our podcast?
I want to have a lot more guests. I want us to be able to call people who we actually don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Now, all of the guys who we've called so far are people who we had like 1 degree of separation or knew really well. But I want to have more people on the show so that we're able to also jam with them.
Yeah.
And we're able to get different perspectives. So I think in season 4, I want to have a lot more guests. Yeah, that's about it. Because that's the promise that we made Lena in the beginning of the year. We're going to get more guests and we're going to make sure this kind of the circle increases.
Yep. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have guests. I also like that everything that's playing out in our industry is super dramatic and interesting. So we will always have something to talk about. And we should definitely get guests on board, people with interesting, controversial perspectives.
Yeah.
And so if you're listening and you want to join us on the podcast, just shoot us a message and we'd be happy to have you.
You know what I'm excited about? I'm excited about Warner Brothers nearing a deal for the Harry Potter
series,
online TV series.
I thought it was a done deal.
I mean,
they got J.K. Rowling to sign off on it.
Yeah, they've signed it. Excellent. I'm excited about it because my go-to movies sometimes are the Harry Potter movies because I'm a huge Potter fan. But I think this is about time that they did something like this because they've been sitting on the rights for a really long time, and it will definitely spice up things, and WBD would probably be able to at least turn some amount of money around after all of the cost cutting that they did. I wanted to touch upon this aspect of sports rights across various stakeholders. Now we've been toying with the idea of how does Voiro get into this whole omni-channel sales support, right? And one of the things about omni-channel is also is that within a publisher you have different types of channels of communication to the same user. From an external perspective, a consumer can access content from different types on different types of platforms, and the delivery mechanism also could be different. So I could have a telco partner. I could have, say, an Airtel give me IPL. I could have YouTube pipe the NFL. While the rights, where I could watch NFL somewhere else on a regular television channel as well, and I would have had to subscribe to it. Now, when you have common rights. Everybody's watching IPL, but as a consumer, I choose to watch it on different platforms. There is something to be said about the fact that you and I could be watching IPL, on different platforms, but I should be ideally paying something similar, right, to be able to access it. Either it's free for everybody, or I should be paying something similar to each other. Now, today, if I watched IPL on television, I need to pay 19 rupees to watch it, right? But if I watch it on Jio, it's free.
It's free.
Now, if I want to watch it on my phone and I'm not a Jio subscriber and I'm watching it on Airtel, then is it free or is it paid? Should it be free? Because it's telco. Now, I understand between TV and digital, right? And I'm watching it on my phone. But between two telco providers, should it not be that the second telco provider should not be forced to give it out for free? Because, look, stuff is expensive. Things are expensive. And providing that feed to somebody on their phone through, say, through some mechanism, like some video player, should be charged. So what are your thoughts about this, right? Because one is paid, one is free.
Yeah.
People could argue saying that go watch it for free, which means that you're forcing me to go download Jio and I'm happy sitting with my television and watching Star TV. But why should I pay while somebody else is getting it free? So if you were a regulatory body, how would you look at this? Is there anything that strikes you?
We've talked about this from the other end of the other angle, which is sports rights. And we've done a couple of episodes on how that's becoming so valuable because of the potential it has to make revenue. But I think there is going to be a need for someone to take a step back and look at what you're saying. Because if you're the governing body of a particular sport and you hold the ownership of the rights, then we've seen people get very smart with how they give those rights out. It used to be all up. Then it was digital rights, television rights. Then it was digital rights for special non-exclusive matches or games, and television rights, and there were international rights. So suddenly you're starting to ring fence rights. And I was always very surprised by the NBA. I follow basketball a lot, where they have rights that they give out to television broadcasters, rights that they give out to OTT apps, but they also have their own app where you can pay. And I'm like kind of competing with the same folks. And the price points are very different because no one's taking a unified look at all of this. You're trying to maximize the value that you can get for the rights for that sport simply because you can. You're the governing body of a sport that's become supremely popular or an event within that sport. I do believe there is a need to take a step back and look at how this is harming the consumer or whether or not there is fair play here. Because with something like F.A.S.T, that is increasingly becoming a very sustainable model if you're talking about profitability in the middle of all this. It's very easy for someone to stand up and say, I'll give it for free. And all the consumers are going to flock there as long as the ads experience is not intrusive. Because sports is one of those areas where we're always okay with ads. Historically, we find ads intrusive, but sports in the middle of a game when there's a break, like the NFL, for example, has predefined ad breaks. Like the game on field actually stops. So sports has that potential. But if you mess with the sports fans' experience, if you make them miss an important play, you're doomed. Right? So it's a very delicate balance. But the fact is that F.A.S.T has proved itself to be a very sustainable model.
this concept of sustainability now, if somebody's giving it out for free while somebody is charging for it and somebody is being forced to depress that charge, how is it sustainable? It's almost like coercing somebody to bleed, which I mean there has to be some recourse for say a Star TV or even an Airtel in a scenario like this. I mean, everybody's it's a free market. Who does it? Is my question. Is who is supposed to do this?
Regulation has never been the be all and end all of everything. It's taken.
And who takes the first step?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in India really, like, none of our ministers actually care about this kind of stuff. I mean, we don't have an Elizabeth Warren here.
We don't. We've seen privacy bills come and go. We've seen regulation make various attempts. But I think the internet and all of these technologies are moving at such a breakneck speed that I don't see regulators being able to really control it.
So I guess it's not, people don't care that much, so it's not going to be that big an issue. Speaking of caring a lot and sports fans and the fact that I was shocked by the ticket sizes of the tickets for NFL, which is basically a subscription to watch the NFL. It's $345
for the season.
And it's 19 rupees for IPL in India.
Yeah, I mean,
for the season. If you call this a season, and it's free, and it's free as well. I mean, if you just compare the, I mean, the disparity is insane. It is crazy. And now coming back to the topic that you were sort of talking about earlier on cord cutting, now it makes sense because for us in India, cord cutting is just way of life. It's really not affecting anybody economically that much. But in the US, this is a lot.
It's got a huge economic advantage.
Yeah. But it's not cheap. It's not cheap at all.
Cheap. Cable bundles have never been cheap. Paper TV has never been cheap. Picking up something like this, I mean, $350 for a season is about $40-50 a month, which is very normal.
How long is the season?
The NBA season, I know, runs from October to April. So that's about 7 months. The NFL season, I think, is something similar. The calendar year in the US runs on the 3 or 4 big sports leagues. And so it's normal for people to pay that much. But it's still far more expensive than what we pay here in India.
Yeah.
If you Indian, I don't think we'd pay $5 a month to
crying shame
watch a single sporting event. No.
I wonder whether people in the US are paying to watch IPL.
I don't know.
And if so, how much are they paying? Because that's another, I'm going to find that out. I'm going to figure it out, whether they are paying to watch IPL at all. Okay, so that brings us to the end of season 3. We started off this entire episode with our top 3 trends across the season, and we used the whole theme of 3 to be able to cap off our 39 episodes. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Anand. And thank you to the team in the studio.
The team of 3.
The team of 3. Yes. Oh, yeah. The team of 3.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. See you guys next season. Bye.
Bye.